Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. As British Columbia's housing crisis continues, an increasing number of people are using RVs and tiny homes as permanent housing, but many municipalities are struggling with what to do with them. And later in our show, summer can be a magical time for kids and adults, so we want to hear from you. What are your best summer memories? I'm Amy Bell, in for Michelle Elliott, and this is BC Today. And thank you for joining us on radio, TV, and live stream. You can call us now on our top story. Should municipalities be more open to alternative forms of housing? And are you currently living in an RV or other alternative housing? Our number is 604-669-3733. You can also call 1-800-825-5950 or just hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email us bctoday@cbc.ca. Now, with high temperatures still blanketing much of the province, the risk of wildfires is top of mind for many. And that hot weather, plus an increased risk of lightning strikes in the forecast, has raised the risk of fire in some areas of BC. For more on this, we're now joined by Sarah Budd, Fire Information Officer with BC Wildfire Services. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Amy. No worries.
So this recent heat wave has only dried conditions further. What is the wildfire risk right now, and I guess what fires are already currently burning?
Yeah, I can run you through our current fire situation. So as of today, we've got 130 active fires on the landscape. 36 of those did start in the last 24 hours, and that speaks to those really hot, dry conditions that you mentioned. We're in sort of our 7th consecutive day of really extreme heat here in BC, as I know folks are well aware. So that's sort of the current state of play. We do have some concerning weather moving in the north that I think folks are maybe aware of. We're seeing a bit of a cold front push in over the northwest coast starting sort of yesterday afternoon. And it's going to continue moving eastward today, bringing some higher winds and the potential for dry lightning, which combined with our really dry fuels out there, is something that we're watching very closely.
Okay. And I guess tell us about the campfire ban that is going to go in place later this week.
Yeah, so that's going to come into place for the entire province, excluding Haida Gwaii, at noon on Friday. And it's a complex decision to bring in a campfire ban. It's one that we don't make lightly. We know that campfires are an important cultural aspect for folks who love to recreate in BC and for Indigenous people and First Nations. But when our fire danger rating gets too high, we look at all the factors, including our fire weather index, the available resources, where we're at in the season, and make the decision to implement a ban if the risk is high enough. And right now it is.
Okay. And obviously, whether or not we're withstanding, there are things that people can do to help reduce that risk of fire in the province. What are some things you just need to remind people of?
Oh, absolutely. We remind folks who are property owners to always be thinking about fire smarting their homes. There is a lot you can do to make your property more resilient to wildfire, and I would encourage anyone to just Google Fire Smart BC. Take care when you are in the backcountry. Campfires are just one part of it. Any activity that you're doing that could kick up a spark, say riding an all-terrain vehicle, or even a shard of glass on the wrong day could start a fire in the backcountry. So just really do take care when you're out there recreating. And also, the public are our first line of defense and our eyes in the backcountry. So we really appreciate British Columbians and people visiting the province who are reporting wildfires really promptly. Anyone can dial *5555 on a cell phone. That's 4 5s. And you can also report a wildfire through our mobile app now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking time with us today, Sarah. I know you've been busy.
Really appreciate it, Amy. Take care.
Talk soon. Sarah Budd, Fire Information Officer with Wildfire Services. It is 12:10, and this is BC Today. And speaking of being careful this summer, CBC's Ali Pitarg visited False Creek to ask Dominic Lai with Dragon Boat BC how to stay safe out on the water during a heat wave.
it is an outdoor activity, it's going to be pretty similar to other outdoor activities during a heat wave. Simple things like, making sure that you're well hydrated at all times, you're wearing your sunscreen, you have a hat. You know your limits as well. A lot of people just kind of forget that they're going to be out on the water for a prolonged period of time. And if you're not sure if you're able to do that, maybe reschedule for a day when it's a little bit more cloudy, when it's not quite as hot, or maybe earlier in the day when it's a little bit cooler. And so we encourage people just to know what they're comfortable with and make sure they stay within those parameters.
Thanks, Dominic. And so I'm looking at these kayaks here, and full disclosure, I've only been on a kayak once in my life. So what tips do you have for people like me who are really inexperienced at this stuff?
Well, I think first things first is safety is really important. When you come down and paddle with us, we require that everyone wear a life jacket like what we have here. If people have their own life jacket, they're welcome to use those as well. Two is that they know the rules of the water. So when you come down, we go over what the rules of the water are here, just kind of like driving. We want to make sure everyone's safe out there. Three, if you haven't paddled before, we offer intro to kayaking classes alongside all of our other programs that we have here, just so that you can pick up those skills in a safe environment with an instructor before you go out by yourself.
CBC's Ali Pitarg speaking with Dominic Lai from Dragon Boat, BC. As British Columbia's housing crisis continues, an ever-growing number of people are using recreational vehicles, or RVs, and tiny homes as permanent housing. But municipalities and districts are really struggling to balance supporting people who might otherwise end up living on the street with safety and other concerns, including province-wide building codes that restrict the use of RVs as a full-time residence. So we want to hear from you. What can be done to make sure alternative housing options are safe and permitted? Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, star or pound 690 on your cell phone, and you can email bctoday@cbc.ca. Joining me now is CBC reporter Maurice Seidler. Hi, Maurice. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Amy.
So you've been reporting on this story. Give us an overview of what people right across BC are facing.
Yeah, Amy, I've been reporting on people living in RVs for about 5 years now, and it's a really interesting and super complex issue with complex rules and complex perception of the rules, which change depending on what your circumstances are. And it's an issue across the province, certainly in the Lower Mainland, but also in small towns in the Kootenays and here on Vancouver Island. The issue might range from RV parks and resorts to people parked on the street or people parked in people's driveways or on ALR land. And so the issue kind of changes depending on where you are. I think the biggest change I've seen reporting on this over the years is, when I first started looking at these stories, it was a lifestyle choice. We were calling it van life. And it was people who are living in their RVs, to save a little bit of money and as a nomadic lifestyle. And now we're really seeing a lot more people doing it. And it's really more to do because they have nowhere else to go. And this is their only option. Like housing is just, as we know, become so unaffordable in BC. So, that would be the biggest change that I've seen. But, we're seeing a lot of seniors on fixed incomes in RVs and even entire families sometimes now living in an RV. So it's a really complex issue, Amy.
And why does it seem that there's still so much of a gray area in terms of what is allowed and not allowed, just especially in various municipalities? It must be very difficult for those living in these RVs to know what their rights are.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few different gray areas that I've seen and reported on over the years that I've kind of see over and over again. One of them is this idea of a 6-month limit. So a lot of municipalities or districts will have this 6-month limit for people who live in their RVs if they're living at an RV resort or a campground.
Mm.
And a lot of those rules have been on the books for decades because, those resorts and campgrounds were originally meant as tourist accommodations.
Right.
They're also on the books because the municipalities and districts have to abide by the BC Building Code. So RVs and tiny homes on wheels specifically
Right.
are not covered under the BC Building Code. They're not meant to be lived in full time for decades. And that's what the BC Building Code comes in. And I mean, I've been through a few RV parks. I've seen a few pretty dilapidated RVs that people
Sure.
are living in, and yeah, there's a safety issue there. And that's what the Ministry of Housing shared with me when I put that question to them more recently. So that 6-month time limit, though, because a lot of districts and municipalities know that people are kind of desperate and living in these situations a lot of the time, they'll say, well, we're not enforcing that rule.
Mm.
But it creates a bit of a gray area, and it can create a lot of uncertainty for a lot of people who are living in their RVs. And sometimes the RV park owners will use that rule and use it against their tenants and say, well, there's these rules on the book, and anytime the city could enforce it, and they'll just get those people out and bring in new tenants and charge them more.
Right.
So I've seen that a few times. Also, another big gray area that a lot of people aren't aware of is that some people who live full-time permanently in their RVs are covered under BC's Manufactured Home Park Tenancy Act. That means they have tenancy rights. So sometimes the rules around that are a little bit complex as well. It depends if your RV is hooked up, or if there are certain park rules, or if you've signed certain paperwork waiving those rights. And that can be a really complex issue. I have a lot of people emailing me all the time saying, am I a tenant or am I not a tenant? Because
Right.
my landlord wants to charge me an extra $500 and I just don't know. So those are some of the gray areas that I've come across a lot.
Maurice, we'll have to leave it there, but I thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all that you've learned this last few months.
Thank you, Amy.
All right, take care. That is CBC reporter Maurice Zeidler. And we want to know if you are currently living in an RV or some other alternative form of housing, what more can municipalities do to make sure people are safely housed? Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone, or email bctoday@cbc.ca. We actually do have a call already from Terry in Pemberton. Hi, Terry. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, thanks. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
Listen, I can solve the entire rural Canadian housing crisis in 2 words.
Okay.
Trailer parks. They're fast, they're affordable, they're modular.
Mm-hmm.
They're a lot nicer than people give them credit for. And if you open new ones, they would be all new trailers, and they'd have a hardy plank on them, and they would look like townhouses. I don't know why municipalities and regional districts are not already doing this. It's just the best.
And where do you hope that municipalities would build these, would create these?
It's usually there's a plot of land somewhere that's not that far out of town that you can drive to. Generally there's room to park. I got a fenced little yard. My dog can have a poop. By the way, the pad rent you guys weren't sure about, it is legally tied to inflation. They can only raise it so much per year.
Okay. That is good to know. And you are currently living in a trailer park?
Yeah. I bought a trailer in 2019. I kind of had a rough time, divorced in 2015. I didn't think I'd ever get in the real estate game again because houses in Pemberton went from $500,000 to 1.6 like in a year.
Yeah.
And I only make $80,000 a year, so it's like, dude. And here we are. So now I've got stable housing, which is so important with the family. I've got kids, I've got pets.
Absolutely. Well, good. I'm glad that that's worked out for you, and that's certainly something, hopefully, that more areas can think about. Terry, thanks for joining us. Take care.
I hope you've got people from the regional districts and municipality workers and stuff listening to this, because it's important.
I hope so too. Thank you for that. For more on this story, we are joined by housing and anti-poverty advocate and coordinator with Prince Rupert Unemployed Action Centre, Paul Lagasse. Hi, Paul. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
And how do you react to what Terry said, that trailer parks are an option that more areas and districts need to be looking at?
Well, it is the only affordable housing.
Mhm.
The problem is it has become unaffordable because a lot of these RV parks, and I deal with these cases every day. I
Okay.
get calls from all over the province. A lot of these RV parks are saying, well, we're not covered under the Manufactured Home Park Tenancy Act. And if they're not covered under the act, then there's no rent control.
Right.
And the reason I get a lot of these calls is because these RV parks, usually a new owner will buy them and they want to raise the rent $300, $400, $500 and say we're not covered under the act. So I end up doing a lot of these cases before the residential tenancy branch to show that they're covered under the act.
Okay.
And these are very complicated cases, and it's not always clear because some people in the same RV park may be covered under the act while others may not for various reasons.
And the housing crisis is it's an epidemic across the province. What do municipalities need to do to open up more alternative forms of housing that are genuinely more affordable for people?
Well, I think they need to take these antiquated laws off their books. Like Surrey District, Central District of Okanagan, District of Nanaimo. They limit the stays, and in some places they limit the stays to 10 days, and no one was really living. Well, they were in RVs prior to 10 years ago, but in the last 5 years, 60 to 90% of the people in RV parks are permanent residents. And this is their permanent primary residence. A lot of these folks are seniors. I would say the majority are seniors. And, municipalities got to look at these laws. And I know there's some inconsistency in cracking down. They may not crack down in a RV park. For example, the city of Surrey owns an RV park, so they're not going to crack down on 6 months. But I know some districts are cracking down on RVs, on single RVs on private land. So there's so much inconsistency, and people living in RV parks are unsure. And that's why I'm so busy.
I can understand that. It sounds like we definitely need a more streamlined and uniformed approach to this right across the province. We'll bring in Chris now from Victoria. Hi, Chris. Thanks for calling in.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you.
Great. And what are your thoughts on these alternative homes and the way municipalities handle them?
Yeah, I think that your guest there is bang on in that, there are just some old bylaws and laws that are in effect that just need to be looked at and, ideally changed in a prompt manner to be able to allow for this. My family traveled for a year or two ago and lived in a travel trailer full time. And it is absolutely a viable home and a way to be able to live full time. But I would say that there are, certain scenarios where it makes a lot of sense and other scenarios where it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If you're driving a van around and just trying to, stay on the side of the road wherever you can for free, that maybe doesn't make as much sense. But if you are, in a legitimate location where there is sewer and there is power hookups and there's water and, you have the ability to get propane regularly if you need to. Those are all the things you need to be able to make, a livable trailer or RV run. And it's absolutely a viable living solution. And it seems to me like with the housing crisis, this could be a very quick and simple change that the government can make to be able to, accommodate more people with different living scenarios in a beneficial way. So it doesn't seem like a hard solution to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And Sean joins us now from the Kootenays. Hi, Sean. Hi, Sean. You're with BC Today. Oh, it seems like we'll have lost Sean. So Paul, we will come back to you. what, I guess, sort of provincial or even federal supports would you and regulations would you like to see coming in to really strengthen the rights for people that are seeking out alternative housing?
So about 5 years ago, the residential tenancy branch had a policy guideline further developed based on recent Supreme Court decisions. It deals with tenancy agreements and license to occupy. And that's a very good document, but I think it needs further clarification because I'm seeing mixed cases before arbitrators where I think they have a tenancy and the arbitrator sometimes thinks otherwise. So there needs to be a bit more clarity. And the other thing is you can have a tenancy agreement under the Manufactured Home Park Tenancy Act, but it could contradict the local bylaws.
Exactly.
And then, so if the local municipalities want to enforce that, they could give an order to the RV park, and all they need is an order, whether it's considered legitimate or not, that's issued, and the person can be evicted. So there's some conflict between municipalities and the province. Province doesn't really want to go further into this.
Okay.
The municipalities are updating some bylaws, and it's controversial for obviously people living in RV parks. So we do need something more clear. We need further development of those policy guidelines so that you do not end up with these inconsistent decisions that I'm seeing. That's my big thing.
And then it makes perfect sense. There just needs to be that clearer line of communication from the top right down to the municipalities so that everybody is on the same page and then can give that information clearly to people. We'll bring in Susan now. Hi, Susan. I understand you live on a boat.
Yes, I live on a boat. So I was in an apartment and I started investigating tiny homes and then I changed to boats. But in both cases, you could buy a tiny home or you could buy a boat, but you could not find anywhere to put it.
Right.
Where you could live there.
Right.
So I find that extremely frustrating. Given the housing crisis, the municipal government and the provincial government need to get together and create a framework for accommodating people that can't afford to pay $2,200 or $2,500 a month in an apartment.
Yeah.
You know, and just I echo what your last two callers said. You know, we have services like sewer and water and electricity, and create some communities where people can live that way. You know, there's a few around Victoria, but it's way inadequate for the needs that people have for affordable living.
I agree, Susan. Thank you so much for that. And Paul in Burnaby, hi, thanks for calling BC Today.
Hi, Amy. How are you?
I'm doing well. So tell me about your experience with alternative homes.
So I like your first caller, had some life changes and decided to seek out van life. And so I've lived mobily now for about 6 years. I think this is my 7th year now doing it. And so I'm fully self-sufficient in my truck. And I just move around the city to different spots. And like I said, I've been doing it for a long time, and I've never had any problems or issues.
No.
I don't park in places where there's, you know, other RVs or people living in vehicles and stuff like that. I keep to myself.
Okay.
And, you know, and I'm respectful and I'm clean, and I make sure that, you know, like I don't have garbage lying around my truck and things like that. So I think that the city, you know, like if I didn't live like this, I couldn't live in Vancouver. I'd have to move.
Right.
And I still work a full-time job. I still make a good living, but I can't afford to live in this city if I don't live the way that I live.
Right.
And I think that the city, the provincial government, and the federal government, because I know it's not just here in Vancouver, although we're probably the worst. Just clear across the country, this problem.
Yeah.
They really need to look at, you know, when you talk about an affordability crisis, they need to look at not only the cost of living, if you want to, we call it sticks and bricks, if you want to live that way in a permanent place, or maybe if you want to live the way that I live, they should make spots where you can do that. Like in Portland, they use city land, empty parking lots, things like that, and they convert them into tiny home village. So these are tiny homes that are custom built on trailers that you can tow with your truck. You just park your trailer there, and there's power and water hookups and things like that, and they've got their own little communities that they do. And our government really needs to, stop living in the, in the 1890s and get into the 2000s now.
I thank you for making all of those points. And Paul, our guest Paul, before I let you go, when he says that we need to stop living in the past, is it the fact that this is the new norm, that many people cannot afford traditional housing, and that's not going to change? So we need to make a big push to make sure they are safely housed?
Talking regularly to advocates across the province, 90% of BC is unaffordable.
Right.
Everywhere. It's not just the cities. I live in Prince Rupert. It is completely unaffordable here. So this is the new reality. And keep in mind, like, a lot of these folks are seniors that live in these RV parks. And it's not necessarily because they made bad life decisions. It's just, that's the nature of unaffordability. This is the new reality. Keep in mind, and our last guest brought up an interesting point, these are communities as well. And one of the things that really trouble me is when somebody is not considered a tenant and gets removed and pulled out of these communities. They're not only losing their space, these RV parks are full. So it's not like they can go to the next RV park either.
No.
They're losing their communities. And sometimes they're tearing down their structures and everything they built. I just had a client take $50,000 worth of structures to the dump because they're not covered under the act, because it wasn't clear. It was clear to the arbitrator, but I mean, this is why we need further clarity.
Right.
Things like this shouldn't happen.
No.
When somebody lives in a place for 20 years and you turn around and say, hey, this is not, you're not covered under the act. I mean, there needs to be further consistency in it.
It does. Paul, that's all the time that we have today, but I thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Paul Lagasse, an anti-poverty advocate and housing advocate. The CBC News with Robert Zimmerman is next.
Good afternoon. The number of active wildfires in BC has jumped by more than 24 to about 130 amid the heat wave, which is creating prime conditions for fire. There are 2 wildfires of note. The BC Wildfire Service says smoke from the 130-hectare Little Oliver Creek fire is visible from Highway 16 and the Terrace area, while the 240-hectare Hook Creek fire is burning out of control to the north near the Yukon boundary. An evacuation alert has been issued for a rural area in northeastern BC, about 30 kilometers south of Dawson Creek. The alert covers Toms Lake, Tupper, and Gundy, as well as Swan Lake Provincial Park on the Alberta border. And the RCMP say a family of 3, including an infant, were killed in a head-on crash with a semi in Agassiz yesterday. Alcohol and drugs were not factors, but police haven't said what might have led to the crash. The victims' names have not been released. And now the forecast. Heat warnings continue with highs into the 40s in some southern sections of the province. On the north coast, periods of rain this afternoon, then cloudy with a high of 16. Highs up to 33 and sunny in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, a mix of sun and cloud with a high of 31. Highs up to 39 degrees with local smoke and some sunshine in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, a high of 38 and sunny with some local smoke as well. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, warm and sunny this afternoon with highs up to 30 inland. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thank you, Robert. We're going to be talking this half hour about people's favorite summer memories other than tennis. Do you have any favorite memories of summer?
Well, I grew up in Vernon, and most of our summers were spent at the country club playing tennis. But it was on Cal Lake, so we did a lot of swimming and played a lot of backgammon. So
Nice.
that's pretty much what I did, for 15 years of my childhood. So I guess those are my strongest summer
If you have
memories
to
for
pick
sure.
something other than tennis, I appreciate the
Yeah.
diversity. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Yes, it was lovely.
And we do want to hear from you this half hour. What are your best summer memories? Did you go to camp or did you hang around home? Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone, or email bctoday@cbc.ca. Before that, though, here's Mira Baines with what's coming up on the coast.
Good afternoon, Amy. Later on the Coast, we're checking in with Jennifer Diol. She's the owner of There and Back Again Farms. She'll talk to us about how they've dealt with the loss of their peach trees because of the cold winter, how they're handling the heat wave, and what fruits people can see in stores this year if it isn't peaches. And could you use 3 AI assistants to help you work better? Tech writer Alexandra Samuel has a new guide to teach you how.
Well, we are well into summer in BC, so it is time for the barbecues, the lake swims, and whatever it is that you like to do in the warm weather. And we're asking you, what are your best summer memories? Call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone, and you can email us at bctoday@cbc.ca. Now, summer is also a time for summer camps and a time for kids to get away from home, meet new friends, and learn new skills, and yes, make some new memories. Joining us now to talk about their camps are Craig Douglas, Executive Director of Timberline Ranch in Maple Ridge, and Jennifer Jacoby is the Director of the West Coast Women in Engineering, Science and Technology, and they run summer STEM camps in Kelowna and Vernon. Good afternoon to you both. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Of course. Now, Craig, I'm going to start with you. Tell us about Timberline's program.
Well, can I give you a quick little history lesson?
You absolutely can.
All right. Well, Timberline Ranch started, there were two couples that were from 10th Avenue Alliance Church in Vancouver, and they just wanted to find a place where they could get kids out of the city and away from distractions and a chance to enjoy creation, learn about their creator, and just have a whole lot of fun. And so they found this 73-acre ranch. It was a horse ranch in Maple Ridge, and they sold their houses, bought the camp, and started running summer camps in 1961.
Wow.
And so and so we've been doing that ever since. And today we see about, this year we'll see over 10,000 people come through this ranch. Most of them will ride horses, hang out in the petting zoo with the animals, or do a lot of our activities like zip lining and rock climbing and archery and all those fun camp things. So yeah, we run programs all year round. We run our own summer camps for kids, and then weekends for kids, or for mother and daughter camps, family camps, that kind of thing. And then the rest of the year, we have guest groups renting the facility as well. And actually this year, finally, since COVID, we haven't run it, but in December, we're going to be running our Timberline Country Christmas event in December as well. So yeah, just right now we have about 150 kids here and 70 or 80 staff working with them, running around with them, and it's a whole lot of fun.
And did you go to summer camp as a kid, and that's sort of how you've come down this pipeline of being there at Timberline?
Absolutely. Talking about favorite summer memories, it was every year waiting for that 1 week of summer camp. And my parents actually made me earn enough money for half the camp, and they paid for the other half. And part of it was we didn't have a lot of money, but part of it was just because they knew it would be more meaningful for me. And so for 9 summers, growing up in Victoria, I went to a camp every year, became a counselor in training, leader in training, and eventually was a cabin leader, and then was leading a lot of stuff. So when I had the opportunity to become the interim director at Timberline Ranch in 2005, I actually said no initially because I didn't know a whole lot about horses at the time. But they said, that's okay. We've got good horse people. Just come and help us run it for a little bit. And so that 8-month interim period, I guess that's run into over 19 years now. I love it.
It tends to happen. A few months here, a few years there. But I mean, this is, talking about, favorite summer memories, but this has had a huge impact on your life ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I didn't intend to be here. My wife didn't grow up going to camp, the poor lady. And but when the opportunity came along, it was the right fit, and we're so glad that we're here, and we've got a great board and a great staff. We're really a family. It's a place of community, and just it's where we belong. It's great.
Wonderful. And of course, we want people to call in and share their camp stories or just their favorite summer memories. You can call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Email bctoday@cbc.ca. Now, Jennifer, you have quite a variety of summer camps in STEM, like Camp CSI, Forensic Mystery Solvers, Med School 101, and Planet Protectors, and that's just to name a few. Tell us about your camps.
So the West Coast Women Engineering, Science and Technology Camp, so WWest, run out of UBC Okanagan in Kelowna. We have campsites both at UBCO as well as in Vernon. We partner with the local school district there and run the camps out of a high school. So the camps are intended to increase awareness and understanding that science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM, is everywhere. It's part of your life. It's not just a classroom that a student attends from September to June. It is intended to use hands-on activities to build STEM concepts into everyday life. So whatever we're doing, we're talking not only about the science behind it, but where it lives in a young person's own personal space. So if we're going to talk about like heart rate, for example, in one of our medical camps, we're going to talk about what increases heart rate. And of course, children come up with activities or exercise. But then we also talk about what lowers heart rate and how come it's lower when you breathe out versus when you breathe in, and talk about not only maybe the sport that's creating changes in heart rate and breathing, but also, the mind awareness and how to use your body to enhance everyday activity. So calming reactions, that might be medicine. We take it to sustainability as well. So we build little landscapes and homes and spaces and streams and boxes with rocks and dirt and things that kids would do on their own. But then we take volumes of water and talk about what happens with a light rainfall, or what happens when that same rainfall comes down really heavily. Now what happens if the salmon lay their eggs, and we use little water balls so that they actually can see it, and then we put different powders on and have the rain come again. And then where is the rain going, and how is this impacting the salmon beds? And then we do things like add buildings. And if you put a building here and you bring rain, what does that do to the salmon beds? Well, we need buildings. We have to have places to live. Buildings are engineered. So then how do we work with the engineers to put buildings in spaces that don't impact our streams and our salmon? So we really try to make it relevant and real, and most importantly, fun, and drive curiosity. That's the most important thing for us, drive curiosity.
And I love that. And in terms of, similar to Craig, giving these children, what could be a life-altering experience by getting them to see science and STEM in just a different way that really relates to to them. I'm just going to take an email now from Kyla, and she writes, I grew up in the Slocan Valley and have countless happy summer memories. One of my favorite pastimes as a kid was floating down the Slocan River on an inner tube. It was so much fun to get a group of friends together and spend a sunny afternoon floating on the pristine mountain river. It was the perfect antidote to beat the heat. And we'll take a line or a call now from Chris in Cranbrook. Hi, Chris. What's your best summer memory? Hi, Chris. Are you there? It's BC Today.
Hello.
Hi, Chris. What's your best summer memory?
Oh, when I was 10, my mom and dad bought this property not far away from Cranbrook.
Okay.
And it was pretty much bush. It used to be an old Christmas tree farm. Okay?
Nice.
But you could go swimming, go fishing, and Dad took me to the inflow creek, and we could see the fish, the actual lake fish, spawning, and watching the female drop the eggs, and all the juice comes out and bing bang. It was a summer holiday, and that's what I remember. But it was also science and nature and biology. It was great for a 10-year-old kid. But now I'm deathly afraid of summer.
It's just with the heat
drought and wildfires and all the rest, and you expect a knock on your door at 2:00 in the morning.
Right. Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry to put a damper on everybody
That's okay.
else's good memories, but
I think that's a very valid point, Chris, and I thank you for sharing both good and bad memories, because summer does change as you become an adult and you're more aware of some of the issues that it raises. But when you're a kid, you get to experience it on a different level, so purely. And Jennifer, I'm sure you were pleased to hear him talk about using that, experience, having that experience of just enjoying summer, but also learning science at the same time. Craig, I know that sometimes kids can be a bit scared or apprehensive when they first come to camp, especially if they're away from home for the first time. But then quite often, by the time the parents pick them up, they don't want to leave. They've made these incredible friends. What are some of the transformations that you see for children, especially those first time campers when they come to you?
That's such a great question. There's just nothing like camp. Kids, they gain so much confidence. And I actually had an email just a few days ago from a mom who was saying, my kid just came home from camp and she just had such an amazing time and she's just so much happier and more confident. We see a lot of these kids, year after year, and they grow up into our staff a lot of the time, and they learn leadership skills. But I think when kids come and they realize that they belong, they're part of a group. And people around them care. They become part of a community, and they're learning social skills and teamwork and how to contribute to a team or a cabin group. Just all those things. I think it's mind, body, soul. It's a whole body experience that they get when they go to camp. And I know that so much of what I learned about leading and even about failing. And I think it's important to have safe places where you can go and you could try new things, and it's okay if you don't get it right the first time, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Jennifer, I know that summer is quite often seen, well, I think many kids would argue that it is quite often seen as a time to take a break from learning. How do you encourage them to sort of stay engaged and to continue to learn new things during this time? I could perhaps pass that along to my children this summer if you have any advice.
The fundamental aspect is fun. And behind fun for a lot of children, it's exploring, it's discovering. It's not only themselves asking questions, but it's the instructors asking questions and letting them be wrong and then grow from that answer. Like, we really encourage, there's no right or there's no wrong. There's an answer. And then let's explore the answer. What kind of question can we ask? And then can we design an experiment that explores it? And oh my gosh, what do we need to measure? What do we observe? So it doesn't become about a grade or right or wrong. It becomes about an exploration. When children are having fun exploring, then it grows their confidence, it grows their conversation with others, it grows their engagement between each other and the instructor. And they become happy people as they explore in unconstrained spaces. And I think that's the biggest thing about summer camps is we might have a plan or an agenda. It'd be, Craig, interesting to hear about your thoughts on this as well. But if kids are loving it, you run with it. And if the second or the third activity doesn't get done, that's okay. And that's where camps have a little bit more flexibility and kind of the stiffness of the classroom where they have to achieve learning objectives that are imposed upon, you know, a government or a school board or even the teacher sometimes. So it's just about exploring and fun in spaces that really are safe, but also enabling just curiosity. I can't say that enough. It's about curiosity and exploration.
And kids can be so curious, and we don't always foster that. Craig, I see you nodding. You're sort of similar in that you just, you know, you don't have this big agenda. You're just seeing what the kids kind of gravitate towards.
Yeah, I mean, there's always lots going on and lots to do, but I loved that whole idea of unconstrained safe spaces where they can explore, and I mean, really, the outdoors is a classroom. And just being there, and so many kids they don't get outside. I mean, we know the stats; they're not outside very much. And I mean, I grew up, you know, with woods nearby that I could run around and you know, do so many things, ride my bike everywhere. And today they can't always do that. But when they come to camp, they can just explore and learn and grow. And it's not a big agenda. Yeah, I love that.
I love that, to just keep things sort of light and loose and see what happens. We, again, would love to hear from you, our audience, about your favorite summer memories. You know, did you like to just go out and roam the streets until the street lamps came on? Were you drinking from the hose in the backyard? You can call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. Michael writes, my sister and I used to go to a beach down from South Piccadilly in Caulfield, West Vancouver. Our friends had a house above the beach, and we would spend the day on the beach jumping off the float that was moored there. All the kids from Caulfield headed down there, hung out all day, and went home tired and happy and tanned. Okay, so that is a great summer memory, but let's not include tanning in our summer memories anymore. Let's include sunscreen. You know, I'll ask this of both of you. Jennifer, we often struggle and hear from so many parents that are struggling to keep their children off of screens. How do you address that at your summer camp? Because I would understand there would be some screen component to it perhaps at times.
Yeah, we work really hard to ensure there's outdoor time, and it has to be safe outdoor time, especially when temperatures yesterday here in the Okanagan were topping 38 or 39 degrees Celsius. So it's a balance. And we try to engage the children in also setting that balance. Like, screens are going to be around them forever. And we need to learn to work with technology, because technology is driving innovation and economic growth. So we don't want to deny them that, but we want to teach them responsible habits within that. So it's not just about being on a screen watching something, it's being on a screen coding. And then what does that coding tell you as you take it to the outdoors, or you take it to the human body, or you take it to many different spaces and places? I'm not going to list them all, but that's what it's about. It's the balance between, it's the balance in a day, from outdoors to indoors to screen time to non-screen time. And it's not just about watching. It's about active interaction with a screen, if you will.
Understandable. Craig, how about you? You're encouraging children to be obviously outdoors, riding horses. Do you get any pushback, or have you seen that shift since you've been with the camp for so many years? Have you seen that shift of children being reluctant to give up their phones? It seems they're younger and younger now, having them and having access to them.
Yeah, Jennifer, I totally agree with what Jennifer said there about, learning responsible habits. But we do take a little different way we go about it. We actually see more of a detox, just a 5 days go without your phone. And yeah, there's always been a little bit of pushback. Is it getting more? I don't know, maybe a little bit. But I think parents love the fact that kids can just go and just be so active and doing so many things that don't include screens. Yeah, will it change one day? May we go to more of a model of, like Jennifer said, a balance? That's possible. But for now, it seems to be working really well. Kids do give up their phones. We do have sometimes when, especially teenagers, might come with a second phone, so they hand in their first one, and then and we've even seen a third one. One to hand in, one to get caught with, and then one to, text their friends with. But yeah, for the most part, it's working out pretty well.
I mean, I suppose I have to give a little respect for creativity, but
Absolutely.
Very quickly, we are almost out of time. If I could just ask you both briefly, just a quick favorite summer memory that you might have, Craig.
Oh wow! Just bring that on me, like that's what it's all about right now. I have to go back to camp, and so many memories are tied with my relationships, my friends that I developed as a camper and as a young adult, older teen working at camp. Almost all my summer memories are wrapped up with that. Just being outside, being active, and even the tough times, even the the bee stings, the injuries, all those things that came with it.
You learn a lot from them. I just have a couple seconds left, so I want to get Jennifer in your brief favorite summer memory for you.
Of course, being outdoors.
Okay.
I grew up in Ontario and mining for rocks.
Love
we
it.
thought they were gems. It's perfect. Explore it.
I love that. And I thank you both for taking time with us. That's Craig Douglas, Executive Director of Timberline Ranch in Maple Ridge, and Jennifer Jacoby, Director of West Coast Women in Engineering, Science, and Technology. That is it for our show today. Thanks for calling in and joining the